Alright guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to give a story titled The Best Revenge is a Happy Life and Having Your Cheating Ex Pay You Child Support. And guys, this whole story is about a guy who discovers that his wife was having an affair, and basically he, after consulting an attorney, found out that because he was living in a no-fault divorce state and a community property state, that even though she was all in the wrong and he did everything right, he was still going to get hammered completely in divorce. So this guy comes up with a plan that would impress even Emperor Palpatine from Star Wars. You're going to see how he makes maneuvers and orchestrates things that eventually he comes out on top, where he ends up having her paying him child support. He gets the house, he gets the kids, all that. And it's brilliant. But he definitely has to make some sacrifices along the way for this plan to work. It's definitely quite ingenious. So for any of you guys watching this that have been through the divorce and got hammered even though you didn't do anything wrong, you're going to definitely get a good laugh out of all this. And this is once again show you guys what can happen if things go wrong in a marriage. So it starts off. Grab a cup of coffee or tea because this is a long story. I apologize, but hope it's worth your time to read. It is a little long, guys, but it's definitely worth listening to. My revenge began with discovering my wife's infidelity. Let's call her Carrie. After 14 years of marriage and 3 kids, I saw a text appear on her work phone. For just a few seconds, that would change my life forever. It was a message that was S-word graphic and had no business being on anyone's work phone. It was on the lock screen and the sender's name was visible. Let's call him Perry. Little background. I married Carrie when I was 25 years old and she was 22. These stories always have the same thing. They got married way too young. She's 22. She's a kid. What the hell life experience does she have? And even at 25, in today's world, you gotta take your time, guys. I was teaching high school at the time and she was an RN. After having our first child, Carrie became a stay-at-home mom. Money was tight, so I took on an administrative role in my department and coached 2 sports for the stipends. We made it, and after a few annual pay raises, I stopped coaching and took advantage of a program to earn an administrative credential. She was staying at home with the kids, and he's busting his butt, extra job, coaching, and all that. Being a good husband and a good dad. The right thing. And yet we all know, and you'd see, that he'd still get hammered and divorced if he didn't play his cards right. It's crazy. Once I made the jump to administration, our last child was ready for preschool, and Carrie decided she wanted to go back to work. Nursing jobs are always available, but they're not always the best positions. Carrie pretty much had to start back at the bottom, working alongside nurses that were a lot younger than she was, and could work back-to-back double shifts that took a toll on Carrie. When she asked her supervisor about other positions, she was told that without a BSN, she wasn't going to move up, and at the time, Carrie only had a 2-year ADN. For you medical folks out there, let me know in the comments sections what these things mean. I have no idea. I told her that between preschool and after-school recess, and my retired mother, who was always willing to pick up the kids from school and watch them, I'd support her getting her BSN. Again, he's going to support her doing this. He's going to pay for it and make things work for her. It took her 3 years, but eventually she had her BSN and was promoted to a better position at the hospital. Things were good for a while. We had plenty of money, so we finally moved into our own McMansion and bought new cars. Money was tight for years, but now they're moving into a McMansion. I wonder whose idea that was. I moved from school administration to the district administration, so I had more time to spend with Carrie and the kids. She was working a more predictable schedule, and even with my long often hours at work, this change allowed us to finally take vacations to all the places we put on a list during our honeymoon. She kept a list in our wedding album. At some point, years later, I noticed that she started carrying 2 phones with her. When I asked her about it, she said that it was a phone provided by the hospital. I didn't question her explanation because my district had also given me the option of a phone or a phone stipend, which I took instead. Again, months went by, and I thought we were the happy, perfect family. Well, unfortunately, he's going to find out they're not the happy, perfect family. I charged my phone in our den while she charged her phones in our guest bedroom that doubled as a computer room so we could keep tabs on the kids while they surfed the web. I was updating software on the computer when I saw a light around her work phone. She always had a habit of turning her phone face down when charging them. Out of curiosity, I reached over to the phone and flipped it over. A message had popped up on the lock screen asking her when she'd like to be orally pleased again. But in much more graphic language. I also saw that Perry had sent it. The world stopped around me. I just froze. My first thoughts were, what the hell was that all about? It's her work phone. That kind of message gets people fired. Then it hit me. Carrie was having an affair. So this whole song and dance about the work phone is actually her affair phone. Or so that's what he suspects, and you're going to find out, guess what, that's what it is. It's amazing how the brain works. I started suddenly remembering a lot of things Carrie had done that seemed odd, but I'd either dismissed them myself or immediately accepted her explanation. She was always walking out of the room to answer a call or return a text and claimed that it would violate HIPAA if I'd overheard her talking about a patient. I accepted this because education has similar privacy laws regarding students. She would sometimes come home with a faint smell of cologne on her clothes and claimed it was from helping to move male patients. Again, I accepted this at face value, but it always struck me as how odd it seemed to be the same scent of cologne. What do I always say about the red flags, guys? Pay attention to the red flags, even the little ones. Once the proverbial barn door was open, I started seeing a lot of things I'd missed before. Our love life in the bedroom had cooled off considerably, which wasn't helped by her having to leave the house at odd hours to fill in for the other nurses that called in sick. I also recalled where I'd seen the name Perry before, and a call to the hospital confirmed he was a doctor there. The nurse having the fling with the doctor, that isn't a stereotype. For the next week or so, I was walking around a daze trying to put all the pieces together. One of our kids had left a book in Carrie's car, so it was an excuse to visit the hospital. Carrie had told me personal visits were frowned upon. Yeah, no kidding. She doesn't want her to run into the doctor friend. My kid went up to get Carrie's car key. I'd forgotten my key at her home. I talked to a nurse in the lobby and joked about how work phones seem to be like a blessing, but all they do is put you on call 24 hours a day. This led to her eventually telling me that the hospital was too cheap to give cell phones to nurses, so only high-level executives got them, which didn't include Carrie. So what he suspected was true. That extra phone she had was a bunch of BS. Okay? That's her affair phone, but it seemed like a logical explanation why she has an extra phone. With pretty much everything confirmed, I took some personal time off the next day to talk to a divorce lawyer. The news she gave me was horrible. We lived in a community property estate with no-fault divorce. I made more money than Carrie. She'd been the primary caretaker of the kids, and we've been married for more than 10 years. Basically, if I filed for divorce, I'd be screwed. Lose the house, pay alimony, she'd get a huge chunk of my retirement, and I'd pay child support for the next decade unless I was lucky enough to be awarded joint custody. The worst thing she told me was that it didn't matter that she cheated. It didn't matter. I was crushed. That is insane. This guy does everything right, supports her while she's getting her additional degrees, taking on extra jobs, gets the McMansion, which I guarantee was her idea. And after all this, she's having the affair. She thanks him with having the affair, and he'd get royally screwed over in the courts. For you young guys out there, I want you to remember this. I want you to think about this next time you think it's a great idea in today's world to get married. For those of you guys that are already in marriages and you have a really good thing going, hey, cool. Count your blessings. If she's cool, she makes good money, it's not all on you, she's taking care of herself physically, you're hooking up regularly, it's fun, it's a good time, cool, that's awesome. It's extremely rare in today's world, but if you got a good thing going for you, good for you. But for you younger guys out there that haven't been married yet, or you've been married once and you're thinking about doing it again, you know how the deck is stacked against us, guys. So just really think about that, especially if you're living in a no-fault divorce state. There was only one person I could trust with this kind of information. She was a fellow teacher that had also made the jump to administration. Let's call her Anne. Anne had been married at 19 years old, but her marriage was annulled when he got some other woman pregnant. Since then, she's focused on her career, and we found out that we were kindred spirits in a lot of ways regarding K-12 education. I talked to Anne. She said something to me that changed my whole mindset. If you don't like the hand you're dealt with, change the deck. I realized I had two problems. I made more money than Carrie, and she had more time than me to be the primary caretaker of the kids. The second issue is actually kind of easy. At every district office, wait till you hear this, guys, how he starts making the maneuvers to get him in the position that he can win out in the end. At every district office, there are jobs that are fast tracks to higher positions, and there are jobs that administrators suffer through, like mess or KP duty in the military. One of these dead-end regulatory positions will open again, Ambitious administrators leave after a couple of years when a better position opens up. I sat down with our district superintendent and asked about being transferred to that position. At first he was shocked, but I told him that it was my time to take one for the team, and it would fill my hole in my administrative experience. He agreed. I was just really crunching numbers with no personnel or student interaction so I could set my schedule. I'd even take a laptop home and work there. With my new free time, I began taking the kids to school, picking them up from school, not leaving them with after school or have my mom watch them, and taking them home. I help with the homework, make dinner, etc. While the end goal was to become the primary caretaker, I can't explain how much I really enjoyed taking a more active role in their day-to-day lives. Alright, he gets to have fun with the kids, and he's positioning himself that later on down the road, he can get them. This is awesome. My salary hadn't been reduced, so I need to find a way for Carrie to make a lot more money than she was in her current nursing position. I remember Carrie being mad after she earned her BSN and a supervisor told her in the future, bachelor's degrees will be worthless and everyone will need at least a master's degree. Carrie had worked hard to get her BSN, and that supervisor's comment pissed all over her hard work. I talked her into starting a MSN program. I told her that since I had much more flexible work schedule, I would take care of the kids. She was reluctant at first, and then I said, you could even have every free night, every evening free to study or go to class, whatever you want to do. I saw her eyes immediately light up, probably thinking she could spend more time with Perry. I guarantee you that's why her eyes lit up, and that was a genius of him to think, number one, to do this whole thing, but also to put that in her head. And now she's like, hey, I can go see my lover more often. To make sure she was actually completing her MSN courses, I paid her tuition and fees directly to her university. It was going to take her between 2 to 3 years to finish. That's a lot of time to stay with her to come out on top in terms of the divorce, but like I said, this would make Emperor Palpatine happy. Those years were rough at times. I could tell every time she was rushing off or coming back from seeing Perry. There was an excitement or sense of satisfaction in her eyes that just wasn't there when she was doing her coursework. I had to either smile or pretend I didn't notice. My temper got short at times, and I found myself in arguments over petty nonsense. A couple of times I almost blew the whole charade, having to bite my tongue and apologize rather than scream insults at her that she deserved. Anne remained my confidant through all this. I'd recommended her for my previous fast-track position, and she joined me at the district office. Anne was qualified, hardworking, ambitious, and only needed her foot in the door to impress the higher-ups. I even got a few pats on the back for recommending her after she impressed everyone. Anne and I started to have our own affair. It wasn't some hot-blooded, passionate romance, but two friends giving each other what they needed. Anybody else see that coming, that he's going to start hooking up with Anne? Hey, if she's hooking up with the doctor friend, this guy can hook up with her to keep himself obviously occupied and keep his mind off things during his thing here. Without Anne, I wouldn't have been able to maintain the charade of being the obvious idiot. But when Carrie would come home smiling after spending time with Perry, I was able to bear it, smiling back because I had my own lover. About 3.5 years later, Carrie completed her MSN and was promoted at her hospital. Her salary went up substantially and now was higher than mine. When the kids and I made her a congratulations dinner, I made a joke about her being the breadwinner for the family, and she laughed. Joking back, I should be a stay-at-home dad now. This is where it gets good, guys. A month later, I went back to the lawyer, who didn't remember me at first, and told her the financial situation had drastically changed. With these new facts, she drafted the petition and filed it. When the kids were with my mother, I had Carrie served. The deputy knocked at our front door, and I let him in, pointing at my wife. He asked her name, and then handed her a copy of the divorce petition. With the deputy standing there, I told Carrie I knew about her affair with Perry, but I didn't tell her how long I'd known. I told her to go be happy with her doctor lover. She screamed at me, tried to lie, and then made the mistake of rushing towards me. Can you imagine being a fly on the wall with that conversation of her being served and him after all those years? Can you imagine after all those years just waiting, getting his chess pieces in the right place before he would strike that moment? The deputy stopped her and warned her that women go to jail for that type of violence too. It's a good thing he had that guy there. He suggested she pack a bag to go stay somewhere else. Carrie left after I promised not to tell the kids about her affair. I didn't tell the kids, but I told my mother, who told my sister, who told her kids, who told their cousins, my kids. It took a few days, but eventually the kids knew that their dad was divorcing mom because she had a boyfriend. In the end, the court granted the divorce, giving me primary custody of our kids, because I was already the primary caretaker. I kept the house with the promise that I'd refinance to buy out Carrie's half. She was ordered to pay child support, and I used that fact to negotiate with her to give up any rights to my retirement if I bought her out. Genius, man. I was able to refinance my home. It was in the era when banks threw money at everyone to buy or refinance a mortgage. And with the little money I borrowed from my parents, I bought out Carrie's community property interest in the home and in my retirement. The day she signed all the paperwork with my lawyer finally ending any possible financial obligations to her, was the happiest I'd been. I felt like I could finally breathe. Can you imagine that? After all those years, I bet that guy was doing cartwheels and jumping up in the air. That is awesome. And again, as we all know, this guy didn't do anything wrong. He was a great guy to her and the kids. It's unbelievable. I celebrate with Anne, who'd been my rock through all of it. I'm not ashamed to say that through the years, I cried many times in her arms. And I would eventually marry. Dude, you've been through all this hell, and you're he said eventually. He didn't say immediately, but eventually marrying. I really hope this guy took a long time, because this obviously this happened in the past, to go get married a second time after all this. Especially, I don't know why he was doing it, given the state he's in is a no-fault divorce state and community property state. You'd think the guy would learn. I wish him the best, and this story is great and is genius, but I really hope he obviously did his homework on Anne. Anne seems pretty cool, but still. It goes on. She got promoted to a higher position, and I was convinced to take back my previous position at the district when my youngest child reached high school. Carrie and I got along well. Of course, time somebody pulls up and playing their music while I'm doing this, I'll try to talk loud here. Carrie and I got along well after the divorce. We took the kids to family therapy and worked out this co-parenting thing. For the first few months back, she took a beating from the kids about why she'd need a boyfriend when Daddy was there all along. Between the kids and the therapist raking her over the coals, I didn't have to say anything at all. Carrie missed a lot of time with the kids because of her now legitimately busy work schedule, and I actually felt bad that my kids were missing time with their mother. So I encouraged them to talk to her on the phone instead. When Carrie found out that I proposed to Anne, she congratulated me. I told her it's okay for her to marry Perry too. She got sad. She told me that Perry had started seeing another woman, a younger nurse at the hospital, because with her new position, she didn't have much time for him. And when they did, she wasn't very fun anymore. Talk about karma. The guy that she was having the affair with dumped her for a younger nurse. That's how these guys operate, but that's exactly what she deserved. My ex-wife, the woman who cheated on me, had destroyed our marriage, was looking to me for sympathy. I had none to give, and I wouldn't give any. What I had was years of anger and frustration, years of knowing that some other man was sleeping with my wife. I'd lost weight from not being able to eat, I'd suffer a hypertension, and had to confide in my doctor why it wasn't stress of my job. I had to listen to my dentist complain about how I was grinding my teeth and listening to him telling me I may need dental implants if I kept it up. There were times when I had to be intimate with Carrie to keep up the charade, fortunately infrequently, only to lie that I wanted to use condoms to remind us how we used to have sex when we were dating, or because I might have a bladder infection. Then go take an STD test anyway and wait for the results before seeing Anne again. But in the end, it was all worth it. Sure, Carrie got a big payout when I bought her out of the house and my retirement, which she was trickling back to me through child support, but she lost everything else. Her kids only saw her every other weekend and spent a couple of holidays with her. Perry dumped her, and he was no great catch anyway, since he was twice divorced with 5 kids and paying alimony and child support through the nose. I kept my house, my kids, my income, and my retirement. I got Anne, and I'm generally happy. All in a community property state with no default divorce. If that's not pro-revenge, I don't know what it is. Well, that is one hell of a story here. And again, the guy obviously had to go 3 years being with her, knowing all this, but at least he had a lover to keep him going. But it's crazy, but this guy definitely came out on top, and good for him. I definitely want to give him a little smack in the face for getting married again after all that, but I hope the guy's happy. Good luck to him, but good Lord. But anyhow, guys, that was a very good story to share you guys on a Friday before the weekend starts. And so for a lot of you guys that have been in bad marriages and been divorced and raked over the coals, here's a brother that came out on top. But believe me, he had to make sacrifices. But once again, to you younger guys out there, if you're going to get married, and I warn you against it in today's world, you better be careful. Make sure you're not doing it in a no-fault divorce state, okay? Make sure you're not in that type of state. Make sure you get a prenup. Make sure you do your homework on the girl. Make sure that she's cool and that she's not a drama queen, and be with her for a long, long time to find out what she's like before you eventually say I do. And even then, you got to be careful. I would just simply, in today's world, wait for the laws to be changed, but good luck there. Anyhow, guys, that is it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this, and be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. And I'll catch you next time.